Good day and welcome to Mathematics and Numeracy 1, and today we discuss Unit 6. Numeracy and Mathematics 1, Unit 6. First we look at the outcomes. What is it that you should know in this unit? After you complete this unit, you should be able to describe how to add up 4 numbers and perform the operation. You must also be able to describe how to subtract 2 and 3-digit numbers and perform the operation. This one, when you are describing it, is more how do you teach these things to your learners. The whole focus is not that you have to know how to do it, but that you need to know how to teach it to your learners, how to transfer it to your learners. Now, and also you need to describe how to multiply 2 and 3-digit numbers and perform the operation. In terms of 3 and 2-digit numbers, how do you multiply 2-digit numbers? How do you multiply 3-digit numbers and perform the operation? So you must show on a piece of paper how the learners must be able to, how you will explain to the learner. You must also describe how to divide 2 and 3-digit numbers and perform the operation. 2 to 3-digit numbers and perform the operation. You must perform real index multi-steps problem including all 4 operations. You must perform real context multi-step problems including all 4 operations. In other words, you must show us the steps, for example, for multiplication. This is what we do, and then you do this, and then you do this to come to the answer. For division, this is what you do before you do this, and then you do this, and then you do that before you come to the answer. So the steps is what we are very much interested in. How will you teach these steps to your learners? Because a learner, when you give him a long division thing, he will not know what to do unless you show him that you take this and you divide it in this, and what is left you put it there, and stuff and stuff and stuff and stuff. And then express orally and in mathematical symbols the common fractions halves. So in other words, all fractions you need to explain using mathematical symbols. What is a fraction? What is a half fraction? What is a full fraction? Proper fraction? Improper fraction? All those ones you need to explain to them. And then quarters, thirds, eighths as partial quality of a whole. In other words, if you have a circle or a pie with 8 parts and you remove 1, that is 1/8. If you remove 4, it's half of the pie that you have taken. So, or a quarter of a pie, if there is 4 slides and you remove 1, that is 1/4. If you remove 2, is 2/4, or which is half, also sometimes called the half, and so on. These are the things that you need to explain or to able to teach to your learners so that they can be able to understand this concept. And then at the end, you need to write a lesson and demonstrate the method of materials to teach and assess this topic. In other words, you must be able to write a lesson on how to multiply, how to divide, how to subtract, how to add. And then after you have written the lesson, you must also demonstrate, for example, the materials that you are going to use during that lesson for you to be able to explain this concept to the learners. Probably you can use posters, or you can use objects, live object or concrete object, or you can use whatever that you are using to explain the topic. And also nowadays they are using digital materials, for example, overhead projectors, or you can use or show a movie to the learners in a class, and this movie it's going to involve addition or subtraction or a lesson that is recorded and that you can show to your learners on the topic addition or subtraction or division or multiplication. And then the third issue is about assessment. You need to know as a teacher, how do I assess my learners in terms of multiplication? What kind of questions can I give them? Are these questions at the learner's level, at the level where the learner is? Or is it too high? Or is it too low? And you must also make sure that you cater for the issue of whereby you know that some learners will have an advantage over the others. Others will be clever, others will be slow, others will be in the middle. In your whole you must make sure that you cater for all these groups of learners so that none is left behind or become bored. Teach learner the basic facts of algorithm. Number 1, use a concrete object or finger or small markings of verbal counting. In other words, you can have stones or whatever you can bring in a class to be able to teach these learners that if I have 3 stones and I have 4 stones here, if I put the 3 stones together with the 4 stones, I will have 7 stones. Or if I have 7 stones and I subtract 3, you must remove 3 stones, then 4 are left. And the learners must see, oh, I was having 7, remove 3, here are the 3 that are removed. In this group, there are only 4 left. That is how you learn things, learn how to subtract. So first he visualizes it in his mind and then he brings it down to the object as he can see physically the object. And that is how he take it also and visualize it back to his mind and he understand. He or she will understand. So I say if a learner must add 3 plus 4, they will pick out 3 objects and 4 objects and then make it one group and count it together. Now when they count it together, it will be 7. So these are physical objects that it can be piece of stones, piece of papers, or it can be rubbers or whatever that you can use for you to be able to explain the concept. Use reasoning strategy to arrive at the answer of an unknown combination. So if you don't want to use the concrete objects, for example, you don't want to bring objects in your classroom, you can use reasoning strategy to arrive at an answer. Now this one is a bit advanced and you must have those advanced learners to be able to do this. For example, you can say if you have 3, you need 2 to make 5. And 2 still remains, so you have 5 and 2, which makes 7. Or double the 3 and 1 left is also 7. So if you have 3 and 3 and there is 1 left, then it's 7. So these are ways that you can teach learners to reason. So you can say, I have these 7 objects. Explain to me a way that you can add them together. Then the learner can say, I can have 3 and 2 and 2. So if I have 3 and I add 2, it becomes 5. If I add another 2, it becomes 7. Or another group can come up with an issue because these are class activities that you can give them to do. Another group will come and say, no, we have 3 and we add 3 and we add 1. That means that it's 3 plus 3, it gives you 6 plus 1, it gives you 7. So that is just simply reasoning. The person doesn't need to write down anything, or it doesn't need to show materials, physical materials that shows that this is 1 plus 1 or 3 plus what and so on. But it's simply just adding the numbers and so on, and then you come up to the answer in your mind, reasoning with it in your mind. But this one, as I have warned, is more for advanced learners that can do this. But at the beginning, you can use object. Once they master object, you can help them to do the reasoning one. Now, eliciting. What is eliciting? Eliciting involves supporting a variety of solutions from a learner. It means that you concentrate on the reasoning and method the learner used to solve the problem rather than the answer. So our focus here when we talk about soliciting is all about what did you do to arrive to the answer. If I have 7, as we were having in the previous example, we have 7 objects. And now the instruction is that out of these 7 objects, 5 is removed. How much is left? Now, you are not really interested in the answer 2. You are just interested in 7, and I remove 5, then 2 are left. So your focus is on when you remove 5 from 7, that's where your focus is. So when you are, even when you are going to mark, you only focus on the process. Even if the answer is wrong, you still mark it right if they follow the correct procedure and he just missed the answer. So here is what we call eliciting. Eliciting means that you want to know the method. What did the learner use? How did the learner arrive to that answer? What reasoning did he follow? Or what method did he follow? Did he add stones plus stone plus stone to get that, or subtract a stone from these stones, or what did he do? If you have used some reasoning techniques, then you just take that one as reasoning techniques. And you look at the reasoning techniques. How did he reason? How did he say? And so on. And supporting involves the teacher pointing out patterns or similarity in problems and providing background knowledge, and then support the learners to review their method, guiding them in a correct direction and encouraging learner to ask questions. So what is happening here is that supporting involves that you give the instruction, or you show the learners similarity and patterns that they must follow. You say, for example, you give them a multiplication example, and then you say, let's write down an example. Say, for example, you say 60 divided by 2. That is the question that you are giving to the learners. Now you show them with an example. You say, for you to get the answer, you write the 60 there and you write the 2 there. And from there, what you do is that you say 2 go into 6 3 times. And 3 times 2 is equal to 6. And you subtract there. And when you subtract there, you have 0. And then you see, or you can say 360, and then it goes there is 0 times. So in other words, when you divide 2 divided by 60, you get 30. But how did you get there? You subtract it here and you get that one. And then when you multiply there, you get that answer. So what you do is, after you give them this instruction, you can now give them another example, and you say, for example, let's look at the red one here. And you can say, now that you can follow this one, what is 15 divided by 3? Now, after this, the learner must now do the same and say 3 there and 15, and they must do and follow the instructions. That's what what you're talking about, supporting. You give them an example, and they have to follow with another one that you are giving, a problem that you are giving them. They must solve this problem using this example, following the example that you have given. So that is supporting, teaching them in terms of supporting what they are learning. Now, extending. Extending involves expecting learners to make generalization, comparing different answers to reflect on what they did, to consider different answers or method, but to stay enthusiastic to find the solution to the correct problem. So extending involves the learners to make a generalization. So they can compare different answers. An answer from, it's the same problem, but people are having different answers. For example, when they are asking you, what is the distance from Windhoek to Okahanja? Some people will say 60, some will say 70, some will say 80, and so on. But they are all around there. So then you can compare the different answers and you find out what is the method used to find the solution. If the method is correct, then the answer will be correct. Some will go maybe and read it on the internet. Some will go and measure it. Some will go and ask parents what is the distance to come and give you the answer. But you follow the method. So the method that is used, if it's correct, then the answer will be regarded as correct. May two groups one. For example, sorting the objects that are in different groups, and now request them to make the two groups one group again. Do this first with concrete object and then with cut out of a worksheet. In other words, you can have a lot of objects together, and then they are in different categories, and then you can tell them, separate these things according to whatever the instructions is, maybe color, whatever, shape, or whatever. And then if you do that and you separate them, then you ask them again, now combine the two groups together again. This is this concrete object that they are using, and they can mix them together. And you can do this through a worksheet also, or just a class activity during the classroom and so on. Introduce the plus and equal sign. Very, very important that you need to introduce the learners first to the plus sign. Plus means that you add the things together. If there is something on the left-hand side, and then a plus, and something on the right-hand side, means you have to put those two things together. And for you to get those two things together, you have to first put an equal sign, and that equal sign must show that when you add this one to this one, it gives you that. Is to be introduced the equal sign first and then the plus sign. The is for the equal sign is the same as when plus and together with. Those are the things that you can learn them or can teach them. And then gradual addition development. When you are developing the learner's ability to add, you must first start with simple numbers, adding 1 plus 1, adding 2 to 4, adding 5 to 6, and then you can increase to two-digit, for example, 10 plus 11, 15 plus 17. And then you can increase, you go to 20, you go to 30, and so on, and so on, and so on. And that is gradually how you develop the learner. Develop your learner's addition skills by first adding 1 to the number, then 2 to the number, then 3 to the number, then 5 to the number. That is how you go, and gradually you increase your addition skills, or the addition of the learner, the skills of the learner in terms of addition of numbers. And then number combination. Learners find it easy to add even numbers like 2, 4, 6, 8 than to add odd numbers like 3, 5, 7, and 9. It's easy to add 2 to 4. It gives you 6. And if you add 4 to 6, it gives you 10. And so on. It's very easy because they are even numbers. But when you come to odd numbers, numbers like 3 plus 5, then you start scratching your head. Oh, it's 8. But when you have 5 plus 7, then you still scratch your hand or your head to get to 12 and so on. So those are the number combination. When you are adding the numbers, please start with odd, even numbers. When you see that your learners have mastered how to add even numbers with each other, you can take now an even number plus an odd number. When you see that they master to add an even number to an odd number, you move over to adding just odd numbers. And when you see that they master that, then you can move to another level whereby you have 2 digits and so on. You start with 2 even digits. For example, you add 12 plus 8. That gives you 20. And then at another level, you say 12 plus 3. 12 is an even number, 3 is an odd number. When you add the 2, it's 15. So, and then they can continue later when you see that they master this even number, odd number, you go to odd number, odd number. Now, odd number, you can have things like 11 plus 15, for example. And then they have to add those two, and then you will see it's 26, but because when they come to 26, they have to scratch their head a bit to see that how do I add these two and how do I come to that answer and so on. Using number lines. This can be done in class or on a playing field by drawing number lines on the ground and ask learner to move or jump a certain distance. This will also help learner develop spatial awareness as well. So if you have a number line on the ground and the number lines start from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now the learners have to jump from 0 to 1. They must only jump at even numbers, or they must jump at odd numbers. Let's give an example. Say for example, this is your number line. You draw this one on the floor, just there on the ground. This is your number line. Now it starts from here. This is 0, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Now, if you draw this number line, then you say to your learner, or the instruction to your learner is that they must jump only touching the even numbers. So the learner will start there and will jump to 2. He will jump over 1 because 1 is not an even number. And then he will jump to 4. Then he will jump to 6. Then he will jump to 8. And then he will jump to 10. So this is how he or she will follow the instruction, by jumping only on even numbers. That is the instruction. Or you can give another instruction where you say they must only jump odd numbers. So the learner will jump actually from 1 will jump to 3. From 3 will jump to 5. From 5 will jump to 7. And then from 7 will jump to 9. And that is how the learners will learn odd numbers or even numbers. So they can jump these things, and they like jumping this type of things. Or you can give them instruction, you say jump all the numbers, or all even numbers, or multiples of 3. When you say multiples of 3, then they can just jump from 0, they jump to 3, from there they jump to 6, from there they jump to 9. Those are multiples of 3. So with this number line, you can use different type of instructions that you can give to your learners for them to be able to jump and so on. Now, communicative properties. Teach learners that 2 plus 5 is equal to 5 plus 2. It's the same thing. Whether you start with a 5 plus 2 or you start with a 2 plus 5, the answer still remains the same. It is still 7. This will help them understand why in mathematics numbers are swapped. You can swap numbers anyway, but as long as they still have the same value, they still give you the same answer. So 2 plus 5 is the same as 5 plus 2. That is what you need to teach them. Using your fingers, learners can also be taught using finger to add numbers in terms of addition. Learners learn well when using their fingers to add. Help them fold the finger that are not used. In other words, they fold their hands and then they lift up 1, 2, 3. And on this side, they fold their hands and you say 1, 2. How much do you have? If I have 3 plus 2, then the learners must say it's equal to 5 if I put them together, because they can count now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that is how you show them. Use concretes. Learners will learn well by manipulating concrete materials. For example, either is it stones or what that you are using. And then making dots. Learner will be able to see the dots under each number and make use of the deleting and erasing the method to arrange the dots in calculation. So if, for example, you are using dots, you are having 5 dots, for example. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 dots. And you say this is 5. Now, and you are giving the instructions that you should show them that if I'm having a number like 5 minus 2 is equal to 3, in terms of dots, how do I show them to the learner? So then you do that. These are the 5 dots that I'm having. If I subtract 2 dots, let them give it another color. The 2 dots that I subtract from that one is there. Then my answer will be 3 dots. So how do I know that? You scratch these 2. You can scratch those first 2, and then you can see that there is 1, 2, 3 left if I subtract these 2. And that is your answer there is 5. So that is one way also that you can teach them. You can show them with dots, even whether it's subtraction or addition or multiplication and so on. Flow diagram. It helps learners to identify the various parts of the object and count how many are available and how many needs to be added more. So you can use also flow diagrams. There are very many of them there. Some of them are also explained in your study guide, that when you are using flow diagrams, they can see physically that, oh, there, this is available, this is what is taken away, or this is what is multiplied, and so on. And then all the above mentioned step becomes more intense as we move grades up. In other words, as you are moving to grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, grade 4, and so on, then it becomes more intense. You will not have 5 dots anymore, you will have maybe 10 dots, and then you have 7 dots, and so on and so on. Now let's go over to subtraction. Now with subtraction, we have what we call cross out, just like I was showing you there. Learners learn best when we teach them cross-out strategy or subtraction. In other words, you have the dots will show you that you have 5 dots here, you scratch 2 dots away, only 3 dots are available, and that will be your answer to that question. So if you learn them or teach them that way of crossing out dots, then it will become easier for them to master the issue of subtraction in terms of dots. Introduce the minus sign. After you learn them these dots and what, you must introduce now the minus sign. And obviously it's followed by the equal sign. Now after the learner have mastered the cross out concept, you can introduce the minus sign to them. They must learn that the minus sign means cross out, take away, minus, subtract, find the difference or make less. In other words, if you have dots there, say for example you have 10 dots here, 10 of them, and now they are saying you must subtract, out of these 10 dots, you need to subtract 7. So what you do is you scratch out 7 dots. When you scratch out 7 dots, so you start 1, 2, 3, you scratch out, 4, 5, 6, and for example 7 is scratched out. So then now they must count how many are left. 1, 2, 3. That means that if I have 10 dots and I remove 7, all these 7s are removed here, there are only 3 left. And that is how they learn. Now from there you can use a writing and you say 10 minus 7 is equal to 3. The learner will make the connection between that what you are writing there and the dots that you are making. And that is how they make the correlation there. And then you must teach them the vocabulary that minus means cross out, take away. It will also mean minus, that sign means minus, subtract, and so on. Or make less, or find the difference. Those are all vocabulary used for the introduction of the minus or subtraction. And then there is a count back rule. In grade 1, they must be able to count back from 20 to 0. They can start at any point between 1 and 20 and count back until they say 0. Then they do 5 minus 3. In other words, they go to 5 and then they count back. And when they count back 3 times from 5, namely 5, 4, 3, 2, the answer is 2. In grade 2 and 3, the number value increases. So here, what they mean with that one, you can even have a number line like this. Now, on your number line, you will have all your numbers there. For example, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now, the question there, for example, is 10 minus 4. What is the answer? We don't know. So now the learner must go to 10. Now when they come to 10, here is 10 here. They must count back 4 times. That is the count back rules. So when they count back 4 times, they come to 9, 1. They go again to 8, it's 2 times. They go to 7, it's 3 times. And they go to 6, it's 4 times. So the answer is 6. That's the rule that they mean with count back rules. You go to the number that is given, the biggest number, and when you are subtracting, you go backwards, and whatever number you stop at, that's your answer for that count back rules. Using number line, the number line can be drawn on the sand, and learners jump backwards so that they can realize that numbers are getting smaller as you move to the left and then of the number line. The same way that we were just explaining. This one you can put it in the sand, you can draw it on the playground, you draw the number line, you put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 up to 10, and then you ask the learner, jump 5 times from 10. What is your answer? And then they will jump 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then we say jump 3 times from 4. Then they will jump from 4 to 3, 3 to 2, 2 to 1, and that's your answer, and so on. And that is how you teach them how to count, the count back rules. You can use it in a classroom, in a worksheet like we did here, or you can draw these lines in the sand and let them jump physically from one number to the other. Now, inverse proportion. What is the inverse proportion? Learner should understand the exercise that exercises like 8 is equal to 5 plus 3, and that is equal to 8 minus 5. Now, 8 plus 3 is the same as 8 minus 5. That is the inverse proportion, which is equal to 3. And to decompose is very simple. The numbers are regroup and subtract is a vital mathematical method of doing subtraction. For example, if you have 12 minus 9, what you do is that you put 12, you divide it in 4 parts, because 4 plus 4 plus 4 is 12. So you have 4 plus 4 plus 4 in brackets, minus 9 is 3 plus 3 plus 3 in brackets, and then your answer will be 3. So when you subtract those two, you will notice that 12 minus 9 is actually equal to 3. So when you are decomposing numbers. So decomposing number is simply means you make the number smaller. If you have a number like 10, you can say 2 plus 2 plus 2 plus 2 plus 2, 5 times. Then you have the number 10. If you have any other number like 20, you can either decompose it in 4, 4, or 5, 5, 5, or what that fits you. So it depends on which one is easier and make it easier for you to calculate. And then subtraction with borrowing. Now, when you are doing subtraction, it is very important that you must know that you somewhere, somehow, you will borrow. When you have a number like this, here we are having a number 31 minus 27. Now, when we are subtracting here, we start from the right hand side, we go to the left. So when you subtract 7 minus 1. But you know that you cannot subtract 7 things from one thing. So you need to borrow here. And this 3 becomes a 2, and 1 goes there, it becomes 11. Now you have 11 minus 7. Now you can say my answer is 4. And now when you are going to subtract here, you see that there is a 2. No more 3 there, so it's 2 minus 2, and that is equal to 0. You don't have to write it. That is your answer, which is 4. Now, that is when we talk about subtraction with borrowing. You need to learn these things, and you can practice with many other numbers. Every time you see the number before you cannot subtract the number, then you go to the number next to that one and you borrow 1. And then you move to the next one and you borrow again. Say, for example, there was 1, 3, 4, for example. And the other number here is 7, 3, and so on, 1. So let's take that one, for example. When you have to subtract here, you know that 7 you cannot subtract, so you borrow 1 from here, it becomes 2. Now here there is no more 3, there is a 2. So if you subtract here, you have your 4. But then when you come to subtract here, you encounter the same thing again. Now 3 you cannot subtract it from 2. So you need to go back again to this one and you borrow 1 there, and this one becomes 12. Now you can subtract 3 from 12 and you have an answer of 9. Now when you come to this one, now you can subtract, because you can see that this is 3 minus 1 and your answer is 2. And that is easy to do it that way, because you can see now you can still borrow and borrow and borrow. As long as you can continue to your left and there is a number left there, you can still borrow from the number to the left. That is what we mean with subtraction with borrowing. You need to teach this, what I'm showing you here, to your learners. The learners must master and they must know when do we subtract what and when and how do we subtract, how do we borrow. But we are unable, so here they were explaining that we are unable to subtract 7 from 1 and we need to borrow a tenth from the number 3. So we are borrowing a tenth. That's why it becomes 11. We don't borrow 1 because if we borrow 1 it becomes 2. We borrow a tenth. That's why it becomes 11. 10 plus that 1, it becomes 11, and then you can do the subtraction. Now multiplication. Let's talk a bit about multiplication. Student can pick out subject in equal rows and let learners give the total. Even if you never talk about it, they get used to the picture of 27 as 3 rows of 3 or 16 as 4 rows of 2. You give these things and you put them on a poster. If you multiply 3 times 3 times 3, it should give you 27. If you multiply 4 times 4, it must give you 16. If you multiply 7 times 7, it must give you 49. Those are things that you can have posters of multiplication posters whereby they can see when you multiply numbers that are the same so many times, it gives you what. For example, if you have 3 times 3, it gives you 9. But if you have 3 times 3 times 3 is 27. So, and then it continue like that. If you have 3 times 3 times 3, maybe 4 times, then you have, for example, if you have 3 times 3, it gives you 9. Times 3, it gives you 27. And then times another 3, it gives you 81. And it continue like that. But you don't need to go to those high numbers like 81 and so on. But you can have things like 3 times 3 times 3. Or 4 times 4 times 4. 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. For example, the lower numbers you can go more. 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2, 5 times, for example. And then it will give you an answer. And those answers learners must be able to practice. And that is when we talk about multiplication. Find the total of equal groups. So here we talk about draw objects or shapes in equal groups, and learners must match it with the total. The learners will remember the picture of 3 groups of 3, that is 9, so that when they start to do multiplication facts, they will remember the patterns. Very, very simple. That is the first thing that you do when you are doing multiplication. You can have pictures of 3, 3. Maybe you have a donkey, a donkey, a donkey, and then you multiply it by a donkey, a donkey, a donkey. That is now 3 donkeys multiplied by 3 donkeys. And when they have to multiply, they remember that they must not be confused with adding, with addition. With addition, if you have 3 donkeys here and 3 donkeys here, you have 6. But with multiplication, you have 3 times 3, it gives you 9. And that is how you should learn them, so that they cannot be confused between multiplication and addition. But they can make the distinction. So first, it's very good to teach addition first to your class. When you know that they master addition, you go to subtraction. When they master subtraction, you go to division, multiplication, and then when they master multiplication, you go to division. And those are the 4 signs that is critical. And then we have, on multiplication, we have skip counting. What is skip counting? They start with 1, skip 1, 3, skip 1, 5, skip 1, 7, skip 1, 9. It continues like that. This will give you the odd numbers only. You can also start with a skip 1, 2 skip 1, 4 skip 1, and so on. This will give you the even numbers. After that, you can let them count in 2s or in 3s or in 4s, depending on which one you want them to count for you. Pick a number. Now, pick a number means give them a set of numbers and ask them to make 3 groups of 4, 2 groups of 6, or add them together. In other words, if you have 2 groups, 3 groups of 4, and you have another 2 group of 6, then you add these groups together. That will also help them to do the multiplication and so on, because they are packing the numbers together. Doubling is also one way of doing multiplication. You spend sometimes teaching doubling up to 5. For example, you say 1 plus 1 is equal to 2. 2 plus 2 is equal to 5. 3 plus 3 is equal to 6. So what is your method here is that you move from 2 and you go over to 5 and you go over to 6. And that is how you double the numbers. These activities are used in all primary grades, but with higher number as we go up the grade. Now let's go over to division. Now, teaching division can be aided by the use of solid objects. Halving numbers, for example. Let them first learn to halve even numbers. For example, if you have 2, what is half of 2? 1. You have 4, what is half of 4? 2. 6, what is half of 6? 3. 8, what is half of 8? 4. And you continue like that. And they must know these things just by looking at it. So you increase the number value as you go up the grade and introduce other numbers that have remainder. So first you look at even numbers. That's why we are saying start with even numbers, because even numbers, when you divide them with even numbers, there is no remainder. Before you go to odd numbers where you have remainders and what, let them master even numbers first. Once they know the even numbers, then you can increase. For example, breaking numbers in equal parts. Say, for example, you teach them to break numbers in equal parts until they can't break it further. For example, you have 20 divided by 2 becomes 10 over 2 divided by 2 becomes 5. Now, can you divide 5 by 2 and get a full number? You can't get that, because you will have a remainder. So that's the first thing that you need to. The second thing that you need to do is that after you teach them how to halve numbers, you teach them to break numbers from a big one to a small one. For example, you start with 30. 30 divided by 2, 15. 15 divided by 3, for example. Then you have 5. 5, you can't divide it further. Then you stop there. So you can take, especially when you take even numbers, it is easy for them to understand to halve the numbers until you can't halve it anymore. So you take 20, you divide it by 2 is 10. 10 you divide it by 2 is 5. 5 you can't divide it by 2, you leave it there, that's the last one. So you practice with them this type of division until they master to halve numbers. Then the short division, learner should break any numbers from 1 to 100 by halving it, for them to be ready to introduce the division sign. Remember, up to now, you didn't introduce the division sign. So then later, then you introduce the division sign. It is the first dot that you must know, showing how multiplication can be reversed by dividing 10 divided by 2. And then you can learn or teach them or introduce them to the sign of the long division, which is now this long sign. Now, when teaching long division, the brackets the brackets change and becomes the sign, that long division sign. So that is what you have to do when you are teaching them the long division. First, you introduce the division itself, and then later when you see that they master how to halve numbers and so on, especially even numbers, then you move over to the long division where you show them how to divide, how to use the long division when you are dividing. And for example, if we take a short example here, for example, when you are doing long division, I think we already talked about this. Say, for example, you have 16 and you are dividing it by 2. Then you say, it's simply to say that 16 goes in there. It is very easy. You can say 16 goes in there 8 times, and 8 multiplied by 2 is 16, and that is your answer. But sometimes you have numbers that have remainders and so on. And that is where you have to teach your learner to be very careful when they are doing the multiplication, to make sure that when you have a remainder, it still goes, when you multiply there, it must also go there, and it must multiply it and be added there, and so on, as we have to do the long division. So let's quickly look at fraction. Now, when you look at fractions, you need to teach the learners how to write and understand fraction. Introduce various types of fraction and show how they are added, subtracted, divided, and multiplied. For example, let's look at that first example there. That's the last part. So we have 2 over 3 plus 1 over 3, for example. Now we want to find out what is the answer for this example here. It is easy for you to add fractions that are having similar denominators. If the denominators are similar, you still keep the denominator, and then you just add a numerator there, and you have 3. Now when you add these two, that means that it's 3 over 3 that is equal to 1. But what do you do if you have to add this, the denominators are not the same? Say, for example, it's 2 over 3 plus 1 over 4. So for you to add these ones, you need to find the lowest common denominator between 3 and 4, and that is 12. Then you say 3 goes into 12 is 4 times 4 multiplied by 2 is equal to 8. And then you say 4 goes there 3 times 3 multiplied by that one is 3. And then that means that your answer at the end of the day is 11 over 12. And this is the way that you should know. You should know when the denominators are not the same, you don't do the same thing. You do something different. Let's look at the one for division. There are some rules that you need to know about division. That one is saying 3 over 4 divided by 2 over 3. Now, what I want you to know is the rules of reciprocal when you are doing the division is that you have to keep the first one 3 over 4, but you change the sign, the division sign here becomes a multiplication sign. But then you swap the denominator with the numerator, and then you start multiplying. Then you multiply the top there, you get 9. When you multiply the top here, you get 8. And that is your answer. So what you do is that you swap these two. You can see here the 3 goes up and the 2 comes down, and you put the multiplication sign. And that is how you do your division. It's very simple. And you have to teach the learner these things, that whenever they change this division sign to a multiplication, they must reciprocate these two. In other words, they must change the denominator with the numerator, and they swap the places. And then the one for multiplication, we have already done multiplication. It's there on the top, 4 over 3 multiplied by 3 over 2. So what you do, you multiply the top there. 4 multiplied by 3, you have 12. 2 multiplied by 3, 3 times 2 is equal to 6. And this one you can simplify by saying 6 goes there 1 time, 6 goes there 2 times, and your answer will be 2. Very simple and straightforward also. And then the last one is multiplication. Is subtraction. For subtraction, we do the same thing. We are having 3 over 4 minus 5 over 6. So when you are teaching the learners, you need to teach them the issue of subtracting in terms of similar denominators. Now here we are having 4 and we are having 6. So the lowest common denominator, how do we find the lowest common denominator? You can actually write the multiples of 4 is 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, for example. And you write the multiples of 6 is 6, 12, 18, 24, and so on. But then you can see the lowest common multiple means that the number where these two are meeting first, the lowest one where they meet. And you can see that they are meeting at 12. Is 4, 8, 12, and this one is 6, 12. So the lowest common denominator that they have is 12. So you can put your 12 there, and you put your minus sign there. Then you get 4 goes into 12 is 3 times. 3 times 3 is 9. 5 goes into, no, 6 goes into 12 2 times. 2 times 5 is 10. Now when you subtract there, you'll notice that your answer there will be a negative 1 over 12. So your whole answer is negative 1 over 12. And that is how you write your fraction or your calculations and so on. So that is simply what we have for this section. I want to thank you for listening.